Okay, good. Can you tell me each of your names? Why don't you go first? Just tell me your name.
Okay, my name is Fred Gonzalez, Frederick Gonzalez.
Well, just your name, okay? And your name is?
Joe Gonzalez.
Okay. Now, what would you like to say?
When I was born here, or just a little history of my birth time?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Frederick Gonzalez. I was born here in Santa Barbara County in 1938. And I just still live here in this area. And then my father, where he lives now, where he brought us up, is in Carpinteria. And he brought us up in the area of Kramer Tract, it was called at that time. And that's where I grew up and went to the Elisa School for education.
What was it, segregated at the time?
When I came when I was in the area of the Carpinteria Elisa School, I could notice a difference that there were it seemed to me like a lower grade of people from maybe a different area of the United States. And I mentioned one, maybe Oklahoma. They came down here. But at that time, I didn't feel that much about it. I didn't notice it.
Okay. And you want to go on, or? How about telling me about yourself?
Well, my name is Joe Gonzalez, and I was born in Hanford, but we moved into Carpinteria area in the early 30s. As a matter of fact, I must have been about a year old when we moved here. So we came here in about 1929, and we started school in Goleta Union School way back in the 30s, and we lived in Carpinteria in several places. We lived in a little section that they call Hollywood, which is 9th Street. And
how did Hollywood get its name?
Hollywood was mostly the action place. When they had jamaikas or dances or weddings, it was all done there in that area. And so it became sort of a glamorized little section of town, and they call it Hollywood. So, and anyway, we lived there for a spell. We had just moved from back in the Fresno area, where I was born in Hanford, and then we moved into Kramer, and we rented there in the Gonzalez property. This is another Gonzalez, not related to us, but we rented a little shack or whatever we call it there, and we lived there also for a short period of time until we bought the property as Kramer comes in from the 101 and it starts turning around to create a tract of Kramer, and we started to clear out the area, and we had animal goats just in the inner circle of that area. We used to put our goats out there, and they used to feed around that area. It was all grass in there. And a little later, we had our neighbors, our first neighbors to our right, toward the mountains, and it was the Saragosas that came in and bought that place. We helped them when we were kids. We helped them clear out the Bermuda and the grass and everything so they can build their house in there. But other than that, it was like a huckleberry fin. We went fishing, whether we was in the creek, there was always water in the creek, and we're going fishing. I caught a salmon there. Right there by the railroad track, we caught a salmon there. If we didn't go over there, we came over to this creek over here, Franklin Creek, and we caught a salmon over there. And whenever we wanted to go and do anything, we went down to the beach and fished. and caught our limit every time. I mean, it was so plentiful.
What was it? Steelhead salmon?
The salmon are the ones on the freshwater. And then there was a lot of perch, bullhead, and different kind of sea life that because we used to take a can of water and get the water from the ocean, throw the mussels in there, boil them, then they were done, we ate them. So we didn't take any lunch. So, and I mean, it was just, I mean, you live off the land, really. And anyway.
Did you know any Chumash people, or do you have any Chumash in your family?
No, not of that. Closest we came into that other generation was the Pedro Vargas. He was the old, they have a picture of him, Pedro, and in the museum, and he's the only one that I remember him being back in there.
Really?
But it was very predominant that all people, I was starting to think of the other day, the names, just the names show you that it's another generation, like Don Pantaleon was a name, and Altamirano. Now it's Joe, Frank, and so you notice the difference as things went by. And as far as saying that I never really noticed the prejudice, not for myself, because we hung around with, in school, we hung around with a lot of the white people, and we got to know each other. They took them down to the pool hall. They'd be there, they couldn't speak English, Spanish, so, they asked and everything, so we got along fine. And so I didn't notice it that much, because we always hung around together. And then when, even in school, we even ran for the presidency in school. Okay, so we won that vice president of the student council in Carpinteria. And so it was always who you knew, I guess. But the thing about it is I blame all this separation of groups only because they want to. If you mix, you don't notice it. But if you stay in little groups, I guess now they're called gangs or whatever it is, but I really didn't notice that much. I mean, we went through and everything was fine. And other than that, it brings you up to more or less, today I see what's happening here. Like with this water situation, when we lived in Kramer, all these, Frank Stewart was the one that distributed all the water for Carpinteria. And the tanks were right there by Kramer Circle. And there wasn't that much pressure, But, so we had our gardens watered by a hole in the ground and a well. And we used to get the water out in buckets, and that would never go down. It would go down, and it would come back up again. So I said,
Did you build your own well,
With our own well.
Did you build the well?
Yeah, we built that ourselves. We were about a 4x4, and about 7 to 8 feet deep. And it was water there all the time. And this is why I wonder, where did all these water things that's up in Carpinteria? But geologically, if you look at this area, Carpinteria sits on the estero that's down here, and the water, it would come in and go out. But it doesn't mix with the street water. So it was very good. It was very good water, and I always said that there was water down here, and there is a lot of water down there. But that's another story. That's something that.
Do you remember any of the droughts?
Not as heavy as this.
I think there was a drought in 70 maybe. Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, in the 70s, we already had moved to Gobernador Canyon, so we didn't see too much of this Carpinteria. Carpinteria was just building itself up, but you didn't notice it that much, really. I mean, I didn't.
Well, what did young people do for fun back then? Yes.
Well, like my brother Joe here speaks about the time, earlier time than me, but I do remember some really interesting things in my youth as a young boy. Maybe I was about maybe 12 years old. And some of the recreation we had here in Carpinteria is what is called today the Fiesta Market. It used to be called many years ago when I was about maybe 13 years old. It was called Osunas. And so what happened there was that we had a gentleman come in once in a while with a large projector camera, and he would set it up and they closed off the street, the track. And he would start his machine, run the electricity off the store, and bring in large reel films, reeled, and he would run the films, and people would give him contributions for doing that. I really do believe today that was the beginning of the outdoor drive-in theater today. I mean, here's a gentleman with a camera, big old reels, and he's showing a film. And I have
About what year was that?
I must have been 13, so...
You were 12, I was 8.
12 years old. The year was, what is it, Eleanor? She knows the date, my wife.
About 49.
About when?
1949.
Okay.
Because I was
About the year.
2. I was 8 years old visiting my grandparents. Did you see that movie? You did.
So the interesting thing about that movie that we saw together, and because her parents, my wife's parents, Escobar, they lived in Santa Barbara, and they happened to, the children used to come, the girls used to come and visit her, and she would take care of them. And she had a home in Kramer Track, so they would come down and go see the movie. She'd take them to the movies. Well, my wife and I, at the age of 12, we saw the same movie, and I'll never forget the name. That's Eleanor Escobar, and the movie was called Leopard Men of Africa, and I never forgot that. And one day I asked her, "Did you see that movie, Leopard Men of Africa?"
I asked.
I was there. So we found out that her birthday is on the 9th of April, and mine's on the 6th. We were delivered by the same doctor. We don't believe in fate, but it's just a coincidence. But today, in fact, last week, April the 11th, we celebrated our 51st anniversary.
Very nice.
And so, like, I never thought we'd ever meet, and we met by her mother speaking to me. That one met my mother-in-law. And sure enough, it worked out so good, and we're still together.
Fred, say we now still live in Kramer Circle.
And we still live in Kramer Circle now. It changed names.
We lived in the ghetto, we call it.
Well, I call it the ghetto.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, and we do live in Kramer Circle today. And the property that her grandma used to own, which we inherited she inherited from the family. And I built a house there. We still there. After the 1969 flood, we were able to, that's the year that Governor Reagan was the governor, was in the backyard of the Mendez home during the flood of 69.
Really?
President Reagan was there. And so what happened was that in my years of growing up in the school system, I think it was a good thing. Like my brother mentioned about segregation, I never really felt it because in the time when I was in high school here in Carpinteria, they had two areas. Certain people met on the northern part of the hallway, and the other people on the southern part of the hallway. But I didn't like that. I didn't understand why they didn't mix. So I used to go to the other side and mix with the other fellows. And I gained so many good friends. So many good friends. And some of them remember me. I'll mention one of them. His name is, he's still here. They still call me by my nickname. And his name is, what's his name? He owns these apartments down here on well, he called me Nico. He knows who he is. I graduated as a class of 57, Carpinteria High School. And many other people, and I remember all those fine people. To mention a few that we got along with, the Kaizenga family, the Goodfield family, and all these friends. And so I never felt any segregation because I mixed. I didn't allow that to be in my mind. And I never looked at it. And today I have the same feeling in my heart. I just love people. I don't care who they are. If they're human, I know they have a good heart.
Yeah, I think the segregation was more of a, when kids were in elementary school.
Right.
Not the high school level, but the elementary, those kids that went to Lisa school and elementary school, I think that's when the segregation.
I heard they were not allowed to speak Spanish, so you get in trouble.
Yeah.
You're right.
It was,
It wasn't segregation, but it was an attitude. An attitude that, in fact, they called me a name because I picked with them.
in high school.
In high school.
High school.
What did they call you?
They said I was a lover of a certain race.
Patty love.
And I don't want to make it. I don't want to get to that part. I said, well, hey, she likes me. She likes me. What can you do? Anyway.
Tell me, when Reagan came, what was that like? What did you think of him?
Well, I didn't see him, but today you can see some of the pictures in the annals of the County of Santa Barbara flood control pamphlet. And it shows him in the backyard of the Mendez property with his boots on. And he was walking around. And so it's really interesting to see those pictures. The flood of '69. It shows where we lived too, on Kramer Circle. And the whole area was flooded by the Santa Monica Creek, which had no channel at that time. It was just dirt. And I saw the second flood that came. I didn't see that one. It was terrible. Yes, it's been and of course, I received a lot of good information from the county because I ended my career in the county as a building inspector. I worked for the county, and I got to see a lot of other things that happened in the past. But otherwise, Carpinteria has always been a beautiful city. I call it Camelot because it is Camelot. Look at the weather. Look at the ocean. Nothing ever happens here that can ruin this part of the earth. It's beautiful. Of course, I like the nicknames of the people that we grew up with when I was a kid. I'll mention some of these. You're going to be amazed at some of these names. I wrote them down for you. Okay, here's one of the names. We have a fellow that used to call Chocolate, meaning chocolate. We have another fellow by the name of Pills, literally Pills. His name was a different name. And we have another one by the name of Alejo. I think that was his name. Another one was called Rick, which is a common nickname. Another one was named Pilmies. Another one was named, let's see, Zip. Everybody knows Zip from Zip Barbershop in Carpinteria. And then we have another one by the name of Babello. And then we have another one by the name of Coco, who was my brother, George. He used to run Pacific Appliance Services. We have another, and of course my name, Nico. And then another one by the name of Camote, which means sugar beet. We have another one by the name of Hupi, and that was his nickname. We have another one called Zapatero, which means shoemaker. We have another one called Peso. They used to call him Peso, which means $1. And then we have, let's see, we have another one called Torero, who lived on Kramer Circle, which means a bullfighter. And the list goes on. Oh, and then my sister wanted me to mention Blackie again, our local policeman. One policeman for the whole area. Blackie, everybody knew Blackie. He was just like a brother walking around here taking care of everybody.
Well, what year was this event?
Blackie was around what year, Joe?
I don't know, in the 50s. He was here in the 50s.
In the 50s?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that was before that they hired with Santa Barbara, the sheriff.
Do you know the story of how Hollywood got its name?
As far as I know, what I used to hear was that Hollywood had a higher image than Kramer Track. It had a little more class than Kramer Track.
Like
and so when people that came out of Hollywood, which is off of Reynolds Avenue, It's a dead-end street, very narrow today. It's still the same, but it hasn't changed very much. And so what happens is that that's the only way I vision that area. It had a little more class than Kramer Track. Because I remember that every time it flooded in Carpinteria at Kramer Track, I would get on the floor and look through the cracks and I could see the water run down under our house. It was flat. The water, so I would sweep that dirt into the cracks and the water would take care of it. It was just, I call it Kramer Track. In my view, the grapes of wrath. We leave the grapes of wrath. That's in the story. But it was a place to live. Never complained.
That's good. Any other? Hold on a second. Who are some of the main characters? Who are some of the main characters you came across in your lives?
You want to go first, Joe?
No, well, let me think. I'm still alive, so I'm still coming across.
Then enough to still be alive.
Yeah. No, we've met a lot of interesting people. I mean, just like my boss, you know.
What was his name?
My boss was Lolita Armour. I don't know if that's who I worked for 53 years. I just retired a couple of years ago, yeah, about a couple of years ago.
And what did you do?
She was the Armour people. She was the owner of Armour. When she was born, she was the richest baby in the world. That was interesting to know. And I met her and some of her friends, the Wrigleys. I met the Wrigleys, the Felt people, Jude Bell Tolson. All of those.
How did you meet them?
Through her. So she just took me on a tour.
And what did you do for her?
She hired me as a nurseryman. And that's what we had our nursery, El Mirador Nursery. We were the oldest nursery in Santa Barbara. And let's see. And after that, it broke up. But she has a beautiful garden in Montecito. And it's still breaking up now because she has 67 acres in Montecito. That's a lot of land. And then I met.
Are you still friendly with her?
Beg your pardon?
Are you still friendly with her?
Yeah. I mean, I go over there once a week just to look around, see how the place is coming along. We have our own water supply.
A well?
No, a spring.
Oh, huh. Well, now, you were telling me of a well that you guys...
Yeah, we dug it. We dug it ourselves.
Was it used in the 60s?
Beg your pardon?
Was it used in the 60s at all, or just before?
Before, way before. Way before. Yeah.
When the freeway came, everything.
Yeah.
When the freeway came in the 50s?
What year did the freeway come through Carpinteria?
This one is you.
101.
Yeah, the 101.
Okay, well, let's see. I have 5 minutes left. Did you want to say something else?
Oh yeah, you asked about how many interesting people that we met. I'll mention just a few that I met.
Hold on a sec.
But does he mean from Carpinteria?
Okay.
Do you mean from
Actually,
Carpinteria?
count from 1 up for just a moment.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Okay, yeah, so tell me some characters.
In Carpinteria.
Yeah.
Well, in Carpinteria, some of the people that I've met, famous people, I would say they're famous because you probably recognize some of the names, but I met them in Montecito, which is close to Carpinteria. I spent about 8 years in Montecito, I used to work there, and some of the people that I went to their homes was one of the highest dignitaries was Mikhail Gorbachev. I was at his house, and I did some signing on his house as a building inspector. And then I worked on Oprah Winfrey's house. I worked on Kirk Douglas' home, which I did get to meet him, and we had a nice discussion by the time we talked. I worked on, and then I met Rob Lowe, the person there who's a Montecito resident, very nice gentleman, and I had the privilege of meeting him at his home, and I had a real nice meeting with him. And then I met Mr. Andy Garcia, met him, and I met Alan Arkin, Mr. Alan Arkin, very good, fine actors. I met Brendan Fraser, Elizabeth Hurley, and I met, who else have I met? Oh, and the line goes on. How about Fanny Flagg from the old Candid Camera show? And, I just got around with them when I was working in a different situation. But I met these people, and one of the highest dignitaries, another one that I met while I was testifying in court, in Superior Court in Santa Barbara County. I was testifying there on a case I was working on for the government, and
you were a building inspector?
yes, I was working for the government at that time, and I ran into a fellow. He bumped into me by mistake coming out of the courthouse, and when I looked up, it was Mr. Richard Nixon, and so we had a nice little talk. I told him, sorry, I bumped into you, and we turned into a little conversation. And so he gave me his card, and he signed my name on it, and signed it, and he had his address and everything, so I put it in my pocket. The ironic story about that is that I gave it to my wife, the shirt, when I brought it home. She said, what did you do with my shirt? I threw it in the washer. No, you looked in the pockets, of course. No, I just threw, I ran to the washer, Kenmore heavy duty, and it turned into shrivels. I said, that was Nixon's card, and he signed it with everyone. A lot of people don't care about that story, but I mean, I don't know why. I won't mention anything. But anyway, that's a little thing that happened to me.
Well, thanks a lot, John.
Okay. You're welcome very much. Thank you for having us.